You've worked with probably 100 control systems engineers. Why am I your favorite? And what? Chance. Sorry.
You would have to be my favorite because you are sitting right here, and right. Otherwise, I would be afraid. That's fair. Questions you're going to ask me next.
Fair point. All right, man. So tell me about the toughest automation problem you've solved, and what made it challenging, and how did you figure it out at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, there have been a lot of automation projects that have been stumping questions, and what we would typically say is our toughest problem was a pharma pellet project where we had to cut drug strand down to 4 millimeter chunks, and within a 6 thou tolerance, and they were very abrasive and they're static sensitive, and so we had to find a way to cut those down into 3 chunks and then put them into a cartridge. And so being able to handle the strand, cut the strand, package the strand, all while it was really static sensitive, and then be really careful about the debris that came off because it was a medical drug and it couldn't get into the air. So that was definitely the most challenging project to date.
Nice. So was that, going into that project, knowing you hadn't done something similar, how do you approach problems like that are, it's kind of up in the air, nebulous type of a project?
Well, I call them leap of faith assumptions. And so we would typically start with a plan for how to solve it. And then we would test that assumption in the simplest possible way. And so for that one, we built a feasibility demonstration to prove it. Another really challenging one that we're working on right now is a medical blade. And so we have to take this medical blade that's used for laparoscopic surgery, and we have to take it off of a tray that doesn't hold it in the right spot exactly, and then we have to inspect it 360 degrees. And so we weren't sure exactly how we're going to do it, and in order to figure that out, we built a lot of test apparatus. So we would prototype things through 3D printing, buying different components, and we would just come up with a way to do it, and fail hard, fail fast. So we would try several different things in quick succession. And then when we found out what would actually have a chance of working, we would build a more robust prototype, and then hook it to a robot or do a machine vision thing.
Nice. So do you have to do a handoff in that instance? If you have something that's like gripping it and you have to do it 360, do you have to get part of it, hand it off, and get the other part? Or how does that work?
Yes. and so in that one, we have a variety of inspection systems holding it at different spots. And so we would put it onto a precision link conveyor, and then we're going to pull the part off, and then we're going to move it around and inspect it, and then and then put it back, and then it moves to the next station, and then it's going to be picked off, and we'll rotate it again and inspect it in a different area.
Very cool. Awesome. So you had a project working with live insects at one time. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so that was very unexpected. We had a customer come to us, and apparently there's a really big market for feeder bugs for reptiles. And so they wanted us to sort between male and female bugs because there's a breeding process where they want to make sure that they have a good ratio. And so they basically have people that it's their job to look inside of a big tub, and there's bugs running around, and they have to figure out which ones are male or female and grab them and put them into a bin. And that's their job all day, every day. And so we're developing a system to automate the sorting through artificial intelligence, where we can use a camera to identify if they're male or female and then sort them automatically.
Okay. Is it pretty visually apparent which was like a wing thing, or how do you? Yeah.
On the top and bottom of the bug, there's some visual changes that allow us to use artificial intelligence. Same as a person when they're digging around. Right. It's finding the spot the difference, right? So we're able to tell there are enough feature differences that we can tell male versus a female.
That's really cool. So I assume you're not like using robots to hold them or like end effectors that grip them or something. How do you like move them around?
No, no, we're keeping them on a conveyor and
Okay.
in a straight line, and we're going to image them, and then
Nice.
we're gonna sort them based on running them really fast in a straight line.
Cool. Interesting. So what's one of the most creative solutions you and your team have come up with? You know, maybe one the regularly or typical approach wouldn't work.
So one of the most creative solutions recently, one of our engineers came up with a way to inspect slot width. It was a long slot, and we wanted to use machine vision to inspect it, but it turned out that we couldn't get good lighting and we couldn't get enough pixels on the area that we wanted to inspect. And what we ended up doing is this engineer created a touch probe setup where he stuck two pins inside of the slot and pulled the pins apart to check the slot width
Okay.
and then moved it on a servo motor. So we got
Stations.
so we were able to get a lot of different measurements of the slot width. And so it was like a homemade touch probe or apparatus that has really high resolution. It's using a technology that's similar to a linear transducer.
Okay.
And then also the servo motor moves it along it. And so we're getting a lot of measurements really quick of the slot width.
Nice. That's a smart way to do it. When you have problems like that, you know, it's sometimes it's easy to think in a lane, I guess is one way to put it. How do you kind of go out in different directions? What is there a methodology that you use to like look at a problem holistically without thinking in terms of a solution immediately?
In this one, it was consulting enough people.
Yeah.
And so I think whenever we get several engineers to a table and we bring up a problem, everybody has a different idea on how to solve it. And so that
Yeah.
typically generates a lot of good ideas. But the way to probe those ideas, or the way that I think about them, is the least number of the least degrees of freedom to solve the problem. And so, what are we actually trying to solve? How do we break it down into its simplest component parts? And then how do we keep the design very simple?
Mm, makes a lot of sense to me. What about a time where you had to completely scrap, you know, any progress that you made in a certain direction and just start over to a new solution, you know, do a pivot?
Yes. Well, it's really hard once you have a known scope and you have a known plan to solve it.
Hmm.
When you find out that that plan's not going to work. And so that happened one time. We were doing a 3D bin picking with a 6-axis robot, where we had a tub of parts, and the part was a baby car seat cup holder. And so we were trying to singulate baby car seat cup holders.
Okay.
And the part is a unique enough shape that it's right in between good feeding technologies. And so it's not necessarily good for a bowl feeder. It's not necessarily good for, a few different things. And based on the footprint we had, 3D bin picking seemed the best. Well, we started with a tub, and the robot was supposed to pick all the parts out of the tub. But we found out that it was too slow for cycle time, and we might not be able to clear the whole bin. And instead of investing time into that solution, we decided to scrap it and start with a hopper-fed conveyor solution. So we would have a lot simpler 3D bin picking problem. So we kept the 3D bin picking, and we changed where the parts were situated. And so it was tough at the time. And in hindsight, it was a really good decision. It cost a lot of money, but I think it saved a lot of labor, and we might have ended up with the same solution.
Nice. That's a really cool story. Have you found that, you know, after doing this for a certain amount of time and come up with these creative solutions, that you end up having a sort of a library of sorts of kind of innovative solutions that you come up with? It's just kind of easier now to pick and choose what you use, where there's less coming up with something totally new every single time.
I would say 80% of the time we've seen most of it, or there's a similar technology to solve the problem
Yeah.
that they're having that we've used in the past.
Nice.
So we always have to come up with innovative ways to do different things based on what step in the process it is, how to eliminate equipment. But just this week, we saw a new application with a completely different industry vertical. Um, but it ended up using a very similar technology where we needed to lift a stack of steel plates and destack them and then, restack them. And so this one was in, you know, general manufacturing, where another one was in automotive, and they were for two different reasons, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of commonalities
That's cool.
with handling manufactured parts.
Nice. To me, that's where a lot of, the main source of value for using, experts like yourself and like custom machinery and like that really drill down into a certain niche. A lot of frustration in my career has been, I know someone else has done this. Why are we re-engineering it from scratch when we're not even really the experts? So I think that's a lot of the value add that, someone like an engineered vision has, where you guys are really experts at doing something, and you can really bring those to the customer. I think that's a key value add, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think once we've tried a solution out, we usually find out ways to tweak it and make it better. And so every iteration of that solution becomes better. And we know when to apply them and the pros and cons a little bit more thoroughly now
Yeah,
that we've done them.
makes a lot of sense. What is the strangest material or product that you've had to automate handling for?
Besides the bugs are probably the strangest. The toughest material is carbide, and so we've done
Okay.
some carbide projectile inspection systems. That was pretty challenging, and the materials are tough, and so how you handle that is really important. And then we've done carbide fines or carbide dust packaging as well, and so that's probably the toughest material to handle because it's just really abrasive and it gets airborne and it can destroy a lot of components.
Oh wow, it's probably some sort of a dust hazard, dust explosion hazard too to that, I'm sure.
Yes.
Nice. What how did you decide to start engineered vision? Like what was the moment you knew you had to do it?
Well, I had worked for a Fortune 100 company and then a venture-backed startup in San Francisco. And then as an engineering consultant, primarily running projects for a Fortune 500 company. And I don't know if there was a specific moment, but there was a specific project where I just felt like we weren't getting very much done,
Hmm.
as much as I would have liked to. And I have intrinsic motivation to try to do good or make an impact. And I think it's a little bit harder to do in large companies.
Yeah.
And that's not a blanket rule. There's always exceptions, but I think more often than not, smaller companies, as a whole, you can make a larger impact.
Hmm.
And the experience that I had in a startup company in San Francisco was that a small, dedicated, intelligent team can really make a large impact versus I had, a really large budget and it just didn't feel like the money was stretching as far in a large company. And so, based on that, I knew it was time to work in a smaller company and start my own company. And I really enjoy entrepreneurship. I really like building businesses and I really love solving tough problems. And so this fit that need, and there was a need in the market.
Nice. What was your first big win with engineered vision? Can you walk me through that project or, whatever it was?
Yeah, definitely. So it was a pharmaceutical project, and so customer came to us with a problem, and we were competitively bidding it. And at the time, we were not established as a company. So I have solved many engineering problems at that time beforehand, but as a company, we hadn't. And so we were competing with another company named Battelle. And so we were competing against Battelle, and our proposal was just so thorough. And we told the customer that we would do feasibility testing and solve all the leap of faith assumptions and engineering problems that didn't have a solution yet because it was
Mm.
custom. And so by being willing to do the feasibility testing and then successfully proving that feasibility testing, we were able to win the large project, which is our first large custom automation project.
Nice. So starting out, I assume you had no customers, and before that first big win. What did those early days look like? How did you spend your time?
The early days of starting your own company is really tough. And I think Elon Musk says it's like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss.
That's very efficient.
Yes, and I think I would agree. I think it is like that. And so, especially in this industry, there's a really long sales cycle. And so you spend a lot of time not knowing if you're doing the right things. And so that's really tough on your psyche. You're plugging away, putting in a lot of hours, and you're not sure if you're doing the right things. And so I spent a lot of time analyzing my decisions and trying to evaluate if I was doing the right things. And so I just spent a lot of time talking to people, figuring out their problems, and ensuring that we were doing the best that we could to solve their problems. And that positioned us in a pretty good spot.
Nice. Yeah, voice of the customer is never a bad place to start.
Yeah.
How's your vision for the company changed since those early days?
Well, in the early days, I think we would try to be everything to everyone. And now I think I've realized where our swim lane is.
Hmm.
And I say no a lot more than I used to. And I think that that's important.
Yeah.
I think it's important not only for us, but for our customers to know when we're not a good fit. And so I think I've become a lot more comfortable knowing what we do know, what we don't know, and what we're supposed to know and what we're not supposed to know.
Right.
And so that level of comfort has translated into making sure we take on projects that we're going to be very successful with and make our customers very happy.
Makes a lot of sense. So when you say no, you're saying like no to projects, no to features, no to just no to something in general, or what does that look like?
It depends. Typically, it would be a whole project. Okay. Sometimes it's a feature request that we don't think is going to be successful,
Okay.
and so or we're really clear with the customer. So industry or technology focus. So if a project, if somebody else could solve the problem better than us, we would typically not bid it. We would say go with this provider. Or if a machine exists to do something, we would say, go with this existing machine. They've already learned everything they need to know about it. And if there's a specific feature that we think would be problematic, our jobs as consultants, and we're going to live with the machine along with our customer, who is the manufacturer, would be to educate them on what we've seen in the past and our concerns.
Okay.
And so if that is clear.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think there's for me, a big learning has been shifting away from that, to trying to think of the right word, but from kind of a deficiency mindset to an abundance mindset, to where it's okay to say no. There's not like a finite set of resources and projects. Just, if you kind of widen the aperture and realize how much opportunity there is out there, it's okay to turn a few things down now and then.
I think, as you get deeper into the funnel where you're looking at opportunities and now you have somebody that has a project in there right in front of you, it's really easy to say, I can save all of this work in finding a new potential project if I just take this one. But what I found is I would rather throw that away and search for a good fit, because it's going to be a better long-term play for you and the customer. And so save that time. You'll have a higher hit rate, and you will spend your time doing the things that are within your core competency. And so we've spent a lot of time trying to narrow that down and make sure that we are a good fit, even though we take on a breadth of types of projects and a breadth of industries. And so we still have a pretty wide swim lane, but with manufacturing and custom automation, it's so wide that I've learned I need to be a little bit more careful about what projects we say are a good fit.
Makes a lot of sense to me. This next question is I've got a little bit selfish motivation for it, but how do you structure your day? You know, with two young boys at home. You know, how do you do that?
It's tough. So I think I try to stay on schedule as much as possible. I hear
Okay.
a lot of people that are like, I couldn't work a 9 to 5. Well, I like that structure. I like, I typically do an 8 to 5,
Okay.
and something right around there. I'm not super rigid, but I'll work a normal day, and that gets the kids and our family on schedule. And then if I have a lot of extra work, I might do emails or do something in the evening if it's important or urgent. I might handle something on the weekend, but I try really hard to just do what I can do
Yeah.
during a normal week, and that's helped work life balance a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I find myself moving more towards that direction. I like it too, especially I think it's important for the kids to have structure, you know. They know when you're going to be available and that you're available at all is important. Um yeah. Yeah, one thing that I've done recently, I just got an office away from the house just because it's a little bit disruptive when I come downstairs, you know, and they're not used to seeing me in the house, and yeah, it can be disruptive all the way around. So that's one way that I'm helping structure the day a little bit better.
Yeah, if I have to work on a Saturday, I typically leave the house and I go into our company and I'll work. Just because that separation makes it easier for me to work. I work less time because I'm focused, and then when I'm there, I try to be a lot more present.
Hmm, nice. What's your approach to disconnecting from work? You know, in the cases where you don't have to be, you know, in an emergency situation, be on your computer in the evening or weekends. How do you turn off between the office and house?
It's really hard to turn it off. I really like solving problems, and there's no shortage of solving problems when you run a custom automation company because there's problems with and to solve in business, and there's problems to solve with machines.
Yeah.
But the biggest way I've found to solve that is through good employees,
Hmm.
and so we really have good employees at all levels, from sales and applications to project management to engineering to technicians, and so I know that a lot of problems are already being solved, and I don't even hear about all the problems anymore like I used to. And so the first level is that other people are helping spread the problems out, and so I can disconnect a little bit. The second way would be keeping a good priority list. And so keeping everything on the list and ensuring that it's not in my brain, that I'm not constantly thinking about it,
Yeah.
that there's a list that I trust that's holding on to it, that I don't need to be thinking about it and I don't need to be working on it all the time. It's honestly still something I'm working on. It's hard to disconnect. It's hard to turn your brain off to a tough problem. And so those are the two biggest ways. And I really think having a strong team is foundation.
Yeah. Amazing. How long did it take you to get to a place where you could do that? You know, I assume that there was a lot of learning curves to getting to where you had the right people in the right spots and knowing how to hire the right people.
Uh, yeah, probably 7 years, 6 or 7 years. Yeah. Yeah, starting over, I think we could do it faster.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe it was 5 years. But it all came down to generating that comfort with not being the smartest person in the room and not wanting to be. And so I've found that now when we're sitting in a meeting, I'm generally not the subject matter expert, and my team would have that capability and would be able to solve the problem and would give me that comfort. And so as we're interviewing and talking to people, you try to um, learn about what each person is best at and try to hire skill sets that you don't currently have.
Nice. How do you keep your team motivated during complex projects?
So I think our project manager does a really good job of this. And so it's laying everything out in a Gantt chart and breaking things down into manageable chunks, figuring out where we're getting stock, offering additional resources, looping in the vendor, uh, but basically just not leaving people there to struggle by themselves, constantly checking in, making sure everybody's doing good, that they're happy, and that we're giving them enough support to be successful. So enough time, enough support, and then constantly checking in to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Nice. Yeah, I think a good project manager is really hard to find. I used to have a, you know, I guess it was a bias against project managers just because I was always working with bad ones. But the first time you work with a really good one that does all the stuff you just mentioned, it's a game changer for sure, and it kind of opens your eyes to how it should be. And I think there's a scarcity of really good ones.
Yeah, I think also when you dive into a problem, it's really easy to get blinders onto potential other solutions. You start running down a path, and sometimes it takes an outsider to pull you out of that and to give you a different perspective around solving the problem. And sometimes you've gone too far in one direction that you can't
Right.
back up by yourself.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. How has becoming a father, switch gears a little bit? How's becoming a dad changed how you run the business, if it has?
Well, I definitely have a little less time, so I'm not working as many hours. But besides that, I've always had a long-term focus on the company. I make decisions for the long-term success of the company, and I see every new employee as part of the family, and a lot of times they have their own family. And so I take that as my responsibility every time I hire someone, that I'm now responsible for a new family, and I take that to heart. I really enjoy hiring new people, and I think that they should expect out of me looking out for their best interests,
Yeah,
and I really do that.
that's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. Uh, for me, growing up, my dad was always running his own business, and I learned a ton just from watching him. It's very formative for me. Is that something you think about? What are some things that you might want your kids to learn while you're watching you grow your own business?
I think I want them to realize that I care about the family, and that I'm not all one sided to the business. And I think the same for our employees. I want them to have a good home life, and a good balance with work life. I think if I can stay happy at home and our employees can stay happy at home, then we're going to come in and we're going to do better at work too. And so I want my kids to see that I'm successful. At work, I'm successful at home,
Yeah.
that I love my wife, and that it's a very nurturing relationship. I also want them to see that hard work is important and that it pays off, and that they're going to need to work hard. And I work hard to establish discipline whenever they let me.
All right. That's yeah, amazing, man. I feel the exact same way. I think it's important to me anyway for my kids to see me working hard. I think that's it's key for me just to see, you know, that that's important. And I think I want to be in a position where I can show the same thing to my kids. Yeah. So 100% agree. Yeah. How do you and Anna make decisions about the business together? When you're, is as I've found, building a business is, involves more than just me. It's also a partnership with my wife. So how do you think about that?
Exactly. Well, we have to make all life decisions,
Mm.
with our wife or our spouse. And so what I've found is that before making a large decision that's going to impact my time, so if I make a decision on a deadline or a thing and I know I'm going to have to work more
Mm.
or longer or in a different way, um, or if I have to travel for work, I always loop my wife in and make sure that we make that decision together. And she's been just amazing, and been a strong supporter even from the beginning of the business when I was making no money, making less than when I left my day job. And so she supported me the whole time. And there's been a lot of very tough times. And so she's been my number one advocate. And I loop her into all the major decisions.
It's amazing. Love to hear it, man. Um, how do you, talking to get back more towards the team side of things, And you mentioned delegation earlier. What's your philosophy on delegating
Uh,
business responsibilities?
yes. Well, I think that I'm already the bottleneck of too many things. And so I picture it as trying to remove as many barriers or obstacles um, to solving some real problem as I can. And most of the time, it's getting out of the way. And so I try to keep some checks and balances in important areas. But what I tell people is it's best to ask for forgiveness. Actually, their first week, I try to tell every new employee that ask for forgiveness, and you won't get in trouble because I'm telling you that. I will tell you if you step out of line or go too far, and we'll work on that. And so I try to delegate as much as I can and give a lot of autonomy to every employee, and I think that helps us accomplish more.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's when you talk about having, like the 10x engineer or the, really high powered employee, those people thrive the most in an empowered environment. If they have the leeway to make decisions on their own and you trust them to do that, I've found those people or have, shine better in those situations. So,
Yeah, exactly. They enjoy it and they can accomplish more. And so it's good. Not everybody thinks the same way. And so some people, some of my employees, want to loop me or other people in more than others. And so it depends. It's a really unique thing to an employee.
right.
I really like, being able to have a goal, have all of the relevant facts that are known at the time, and then just go after it. And I think a lot of our engineers are that way. They just want to know what the goal is, and then
Yeah.
be set loose to solve it.
Yeah. Well, I think the results speak for themselves in that way. I think you've built a really, um, impressive team. How do you maintain, it seems like you've built a really good culture over there. How do you maintain that while growing?
I think we're really cognizant of that, is that we don't want to grow too fast. We've seen that negatively impact companies. I think our culture and our employees are our most important asset. And so we're constantly checking in with them, and that's our closed loop feedback is that we ask them, how are we doing? How can we do better? As part of our review process, it's not only, how are you as an employee, but how as a company could we do better? And where do we need to do better? Our engineers and all of our employees, for that matter, are constantly being approached by other companies and pursued, and we just have to be the best company out there to work for, and we've consistently showed that we care about our employees, that we're going to make the best decisions for them that we can, and I think that has worked for us.
Yeah, I think so too. To kind of move towards the industry as a whole, just talking about automation in the current landscape, what's a common mistake you see manufacturers make when they approach automation?
A common mistake that manufacturers make. Well, I, I see a variety of approaches that are taken, and um, it's hard to nail down one in particular. But a few things are taken on too complicated of projects in house, and then not getting completed. I see customers not starting early enough on scoping out an automation project, and then trying to get all of the pieces of information together at the last moment, and that can create difficulties. I've seen not all of the information being known at the time that the project starts, and that introduces change orders, which we don't like to do. But it's a literal scope change when new things happen that we weren't aware of. Um, and I think one of the biggest things that I've seen manufacturers do is not loop in um, our resources, our free resources to help them solve problems and put together proposals at no cost, free engineering. And we could basically go through and figure out all of their problem areas with them and give them proposals on how to solve it with automation, or tell them when automation is not a good fit. And so I think we would expect our manufacturers to be experts at their process, and they should expect us to be experts at automation.
Hmm.
And so I think the best unlock for a manufacturer would be to call us, have us come into their site and just show us their problem areas and let us come up with potential solutions and the economics to those solutions. And then we would partner together to see if it makes sense to move forward.
Nice. So you say that you actually give away like free engineering for in the proposal phase, like before you guys even sign
We
contracts?
do. Yes, we typically give away uh, more than $4,000 worth of free engineering in our time just to help scope out the project and perform some feasibility work in the hopes that after several projects that sooner or later it will make good economic sense for the customer and for us to proceed.
Incredible. So you've mentioned China's growing automation. I think it's, any news report you see, they're doing incredible in that area. What are you seeing with your customers in regards to that in particular?
Well, I'm seeing a huge demand for automation. And so, and there's a variety of reasons for that, I believe. The most recent is the current political climate, and Trump has said he wants manufacturers to manufacture in the United States, and he's going to apply tariffs to companies that are not manufacturing in the United States, which is going to create a huge push for the need for automation. And as you can see, China is automating, even though that their labor rates are lower than ours, because it makes sense. When you're doing repetitive tasks, it's a job that people don't want to do. All of our manufacturers have employment issues, or most people that don't want entry level jobs or entry level to skilled operator jobs. The wages have gone up quite a bit, and so the return on investment for automation is becoming a lot easier to justify.
Hmm.
And so the demand for automation is huge right now.
Yeah, I agree. Where do you see the industrial automation field heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
So where I see it heading is that there's a lot of older PLCs and machines that are already obsolete that are going to lose support, and in a variety of ways. So there's a population of engineers and people that worked through these legacy PLCs that are all retiring. And so with that retirement, you're losing a lot of knowledge on how to support these machines and how to keep them running. Not to mention the laptops running the old software that are currently 15 or 10 years old. And so the obsolescence is going to be a bigger deal soon, and there's going to be a huge need to replace that equipment. Where I think the technology is going is that there's going to be a push for simplicity and communications protocols. So this piece of equipment talking to another piece of equipment and connecting a little bit easier. We've historically seen that there's a steep learning curve with every new electromechanical piece of equipment.
Yeah.
It's surprising to me, but everybody wants to do it in their own way. Every hardware manufacturer, and there's just a lot of bugginess. So my hope would be that would go away, or they'd be a little bit more robust. But my guess is that's probably not going to happen. So I think what we're going to see is better user interfaces, a little bit better simplicity on starting hardware or electromechanical components. We're going to see speed increases, and then costs are going to continue to improve with the hardening of these technologies. So flex fading, artificial intelligence, robots, the prices are continuing to get more and more competitive.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I hope that yeah, that the proprietary technology between a lot of these hardwares, I hope that fixes itself eventually.
That
It
they could
is a
adopt
problem.
a standard and just
Right.
all agree on,
Yeah,
what what language are we going to talk, what things matter, what don't matter. It
exactly.
would simplify it a lot.
Yeah, 100% agree. To shift more towards just you know, personal advice and resources that you've used. What's the best business book that you've read? Because I know you're an avid reader.
Yes, uh, I would say the go-to starter book would be Getting Things Done by David Allen. I think prioritization is the most important thing. So you need to establish a hierarchy of what's most important,
Yeah.
what's least important, and then you have to have an accurate uh, getting things done list, and you need to have one number one.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. One thing that it's along those same lines. I love that book as well. Is limiting the number of things to get done. That's super key. Yeah, addition by subtraction for sure. What's the most useful piece of advice you've received? Maybe from a mentor or you know otherwise.
It's a good question. Um, I think the most useful piece of advice was when we were going through a particularly tough patch at Engine Vision. And one of my mentors told me that you're messing up. Basically, like, this is your problem. This is
Mm.
your problem to solve. And the, it wasn't that I was deflecting blame, but it was just more squarely targeting the situation and r- really making me make tough decisions about employees that we had at the time. And I think that in certain situations, it's hard to let people go.
Hmm.
And sometimes you could need a little bit of a nudge. And I think that that was that nudge for me of making some really challenging personnel decisions that I was reluctant to make.
Yeah, yeah. Tough love is needed sometimes. In my experience, yeah, that part of business is the toughest part. The firing and personnel issues. It's yeah, definitely a skill you don't think about when you're starting an engineering company, but that's necessary. And then yeah, last question. So at the end of the day, what's a dream project you just love to work on?
I would love to work on a project that was really high throughput rate assembly machine, maybe 1,000 parts per minute assembling. I think I really enjoy just watching parts get put together.
Yeah,
I really enjoy watching how it's made. I really enjoy making machines that are like that. And so, really high throughput, really high complexity is would be a perfect machine to work on.
nice. I assume that would be like just some, you know, it's pretty wild hardware to get
Yeah,
a thousand
Yeah,
parts per minute.
out of our swim lane,
Yeah,
but I think we could do it, and I think it'd be fun. But strategically, of course.
right. Sure. Absolutely. Awesome, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.